Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today, we got another episode of reviewing NHL teams off-season so far. As today, we're going to be talking about the Los Angeles Kings, as we're going to be looking over their pretty quiet off-season, I guess you could say. They made some big splashes, but not a lot of big moves, as they look to slowly accelerate this rebuild a little bit. As, I mean, they already got the prospects ready to go. They just need some current star talent to make this team even better. But before we get into this whole offseason with the LA Kings, I'd like to just say, if you are new to the channel, make sure to stop that subscribe button and hit that like button as well. That'll be very much appreciated, boys. So, let's get into this one here with the Los Angeles Kings, as they had, a relatively quiet offseason, I guess you can say. Of course, you could already see Victor Arvidsson. I was looking over his stats before we jumped on the video. But, they did a lot of trades, which we're going to get into because their draft is a little bit weird. I actually did not notice their draft. They only selected people in the first, second, and third round and then traded away the rest of their other late round picks, as you can see by the deal that they did with Ottawa, the deal that they did with Carolina, and the deal that they did with Calgary. They traded away a lot of their later on picks to pick up picks, in the third, second round to get players that they actually wanted, which I thought was really smart of the LA Kings. But this offseason, I thought was pretty good for the LA Kings. They did a lot of smart moves. They know that their roster is slowly improving, and it is getting better and better. They just need a last few solid pieces to make this team a little bit better. Picking up Danault, picking up Arvidsson, getting Edler as a veteran presence. I really like a lot of those moves. So let's take a look at the trades. Of course, the biggest one, one of the biggest deals that they made, of course, was picking up Victor Arvidsson for a second and third round pick. Now, if we take a look at Arvidsson, his stats, over the past 2 seasons haven't been fantastic. 15 goals in the 2019-20 season. Last year, he only had 10 goals last year. So maybe he's having a bit of a, regression in his game. But, the Nashville Predators were also having a regression in their game, and they weren't able to score on the power play. They weren't able to score really on 5-on-5 either. The team wasn't very good there in Nashville, and Arvidsson was one of those guys that just wasn't able to catch a flame. Now, this guy was an absolute steal of a contract when they did sign him, right? This guy put up 61 points. He's been, almost 3 years in a row where he was scoring 30 goals. This is a guy that could potentially be a big goal scorer for the LA Kings. They just have to get him back to that form. And even then, they're only paying him for the next 3 years at $4.25 million. For a guy that maybe can pot you 50 to 20 goals a season is not that bad. And I think Victor Arvidsson could get his game back here in LA. It's just depending on if the LA Kings can also be a goal scoring team going into next year as well. But I think Victor Arvidsson will help out a lot with that, and I think he could bounce back. He's still a very young guy, 28 years old. He still has that speed. I think he's going to be a very useful forward. His expected offense is still really high up there. It hasn't went down in his expected offense. He just hasn't been able to finish over these past 2 years. So I think he will get back on that path of goal scoring, and I think he will start finding that luck again. And I'm excited to see how well he'll do there. But I think this was a steal of a deal, only giving up a second and third. It's not going to hurt your team too much, even to pay him only $4.25 million, unless he really regresses and only scores, maybe 5 goals next year and does the exact same thing of what he did last year and only scored 10 goals. Then maybe this deal is not the greatest looking deal in the world. But with a team that's rebuilding, a team that's on the uprise, if this guy doesn't pan out for you, it's not the biggest deal in the world. And then, of course, just some small trades, trading away draft picks, which we'll talk about the draft now, which I quite honestly like their draft. First up, they get Brant Clark, which they needed a future defenseman. You look at a lot of their future prospects coming up the pipeline there for their defense core. They didn't have any guy that could really take the top 2 spot, right? I mean, Drew Doughty is there, but I mean, Drew Doughty's not a top 2 defenseman anymore, and they really don't got anyone else. So now picking up Brant Clark to maybe potentially be that future right-handed defenseman to come up the pipeline and be that next guy. He was great for Team Canada. He was really good in the Slovak League, putting up 15 points in 26 games. This is a defenseman that LA Kings fans should be excited about. Could potentially be a top 2 defenseman, but I think he'll be a really solid top 4, top 2 defenseman for the LA Kings moving forward. Then they also picked up Francesco Pinelli as well, which I think is another steal as well. A nice center. I'm not too sure, all about his game, but I just know that this guy is going to be a really good player from what I've heard from other scouts and from other people. This player sounds like a steal. Like, I think I heard of him being in the first round, but he dropped down in the second round. And then, of course, there are two other picks here with Samuel Helenis and Kirill Kirsanov, which I don't know too much about these guys. We do have another defenseman here in this Russian. He is playing in the KHL right now, so that's showing you a lot. He played 29 games last year in the KHL as well as a rookie, and this year you might be playing full time there in Russia, so we'll see how that pans out for him. But a very quiet draft, of course, for the LA Kings. They made a lot of trades, but I think they knew who they wanted to pick, and they knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of steals later on in the draft because of the fact that this draft was such a mystery. So it was smart by them to trade away a lot of their picks and go after players that they know will be really good and that have some high upside right now. So I really like what they did there. And then in the free agency, they are actually kind of quiet too. They actually really didn't lose a whole lot of people. Like, you take a look, they only lost Groznik, Matt Luff, and like this Isamon, and that's all they lost in this past free agency. They actually gained more than they lost, and I quite honestly like that for the LA Kings. So for free agent signings, of course, they got Alexander Edler to a 1-year, $3.5 million deal, which I think is a steal. Alexander Edler's still a really good defenseman at the age he's at. Is still a really great two-way defender at that as well. And he's going to be bringing that veteran leadership. There's a lot of young defensemen coming up the pipeline for the LA Kings, especially the defensemen that were playing this past season, like Sean Walker, like Michael Anderson, like Tobias Bjornfoot, and Matt Roy. They're all very young defensemen just starting off their careers. So Alexander Edler is a perfect guy to help a lot of these young defensemen develop and become really good defensemen. So I think Alexander Edler was a really smart pickup because of the fact that he's still a really good defenseman as well. And also, they also picked up a KHL guy there in Vladimir Chekiev, I think his name is, but he did pretty well in the KHL, looking mostly like a playmaker. But I think this could potentially be another guy that could jump into the lineup this upcoming season and play really well for the LA Kings. And it's a low risk deal. It's like, what, 925 grand? That's very low risk. And how old is he right now too? 25 years old. A very young Russian forward. Maybe he could potentially be a player that jumps in the lineup for the LA Kings. That's a really good move. And then otherwise, they also picked up Philip Deneau. This was the biggest move that they made, signing him to a 6-year, $5.5 million deal, which I gotta say, I really like what they did with Philip Deneau. I think this is going to be a really good contract. Now, I'll show you why. Before I click on Jfresh's analytics, I like to just say, make sure to go check his Patreon out. He has some great analytic cards. If you want to go check him out, his link will be down in the description. Oh my god, I knocked over a battery and it made me slur up my word. His link will be down in the description below, but let's take a look at his analytics here. And Philip Deneau looks like a really, really good player. His defensive analytics, and you could even just watch his game a little bit, and you can see that this guy is really good, solid defensively, and he was that for the Montreal Canadiens going through the playoffs and even throughout the regular season. And he's not too bad offensively. Sure, he doesn't score a lot of goals, but he can pass that puck and set up people. So if he's playing alongside of a guy like a Victor Arvidsson who doesn't play as well defensively, I think it could work out really well. Tatar played really well alongside of Philip Deneau when they did do that, so I think Arvidsson could do the exact same thing as a Tatar. Tatar is a little bit better than Arvidsson, of course, but I think he could do the exact same thing. Like that's a great combination of throwing Deneau and Arvidsson together. A great defensive guy who can pass the puck pretty well to a guy that can absolutely light it up in Victor Arvidsson. But I really like the move that they did in picking up Philip Deneau. He's going to be a really good defensive forward for their team moving forward. Now, it kind of lays a big question on what they're going to really do for their center core. Like, what are they going to do with Quinton Byfield because of the fact that they still have Anze Kopitar, and now they have Philip Deneau as well as a center. And now, are you thinking that maybe Quinton Byfield, is going to be playing on the third line, which most likely he will. But if they do, or if they are thinking about playing Quinton Byfield on the third line and making a really, really stacked up depth, this could be a very scary team in like 2 years top. And That's really scary for the Pacific Division right now if you're really thinking about it. As me, as an Oilers fan and Vegas Golden Knights fans, or whatever it may be, with this prospect pool that they have right now and the way that their top six is looking right now, and if they have a lot of their young guys jump up into the lineup this upcoming season, it could be really, really damn scary. Otherwise, they also re-signed Andres Anthony to a $2.7 million deal for 1 year. Not a bad move. And then they also got Trevor Morrow to a 2-year, $1.875 million deal, which is not bad either. And then that's really it. They didn't really do a whole lot. They didn't really add a whole lot, but they really didn't need to, honestly. The team that they had last year was pretty good. You know, you added Danault and Arvidsson. Now you don't have to rely a lot on Velarde or Anthony playing in the top six. You can rely on Danault and Arvidsson taking that ice time, which is really smart. Velarde can, you know, he's been doing good, but Perlo always says that he's going to sooner or later break out, which he did have a really good solid season this year. Without a doubt, he had a really solid season this year, and I'm excited to see how well he'll do going into this upcoming season. And, you know, maybe the fact that he's not going to be relied on as much this year, maybe he will play really, really good this year. We'll have to see. But they still have a really good goaltender there in Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick. Jonathan Quick, not so much, but Cal Peterson, if he really has another good season this year, this LA Kings team could be a scary team. Now, I don't see them making it into the playoffs this upcoming season. I still see them maybe being a tweener team, but this Pacific Division is really weak. So if the LA Kings really catch a flame and they maybe have players like a Quinton Byfield jumping in the lineup this year, and Jared Anderson-Dolan play really well, or, you know, Arthur Kaliev jumps in, or whatever it may be, some of these young prospects start jumping in the lineup and really start blowing up, this LA Kings team could be a very potentially scary team going into this upcoming season. And I gotta say, I'm excited to start watching some LA Kings games now. You know, they have Arvidsson. They're starting to look like a really exciting team, and this has been a team that we've been talking about for the past 2 years now, that could be a really scary team just because of their prospect pool alone. But I think for this offseason, I think I'm honestly gonna give them. It's kind of hard to give them it's an easy grade to give this team because first of all, they didn't lose a whole lot. They gained a whole lot with adding Danault, Arvidsson, and Edler. You know, a lot of veteran leadership there. I gotta say, I think I'm gonna give this team an A, to be honest with you. They didn't lose out on anyone. You know, they signed really smart contracts. Danault, Arvidsson wasn't a bad move. Edler was only signed to a 1-year deal. You know, none of these contracts are really going to hurt the team. And if anything, maybe Danault could be the worst one, but he's going to be a really good prowess two-way forward for years to come, whether he's playing on the second or third line for the LA Kings moving forward. So, honestly, maybe it was a bit of an overpayment. Maybe it was a bit too long because of the fact that you are going to have Turcotte and Byfield come up the pipeline, and you also still have Velarde there as well. But that's the only knock I have on them. Like, Danault is still a really good player no matter which way you look at it, and he was going to get that type of money on any other team around the league. So whether he's playing on the second or third line, he will be a really, really good player for the LA Kings. So honestly, yeah, I'm giving this team an A for their offseason. I really like what they did. And it's like there's nothing you could say negative about this team's offseason. They didn't lose anyone. They gained really good players, and their team looks really good. That's all I have to say for this one here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, tell me guys in the comment section below how you guys thought of the LA Kings offseason, and I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna see you guys in the next video, and yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. See you guys all later. Adios, amigos.